They walk the trails alone. They are the eyes of the park. But every forest guard knows a secret truth. They are not the only things out there. The forest is watching. It is listening. And sometimes it takes. These are the darkest stories from the forest guards. Tales of things that call back when you shout. Of shadows that smile. Of trees that hold secrets deep beneath the ground. Keep your lights on. Stay close to the sound of my voice. Because once you step onto these trails, you can never be sure you're coming back. The Quiet Whistler of Bearstone Ridge. Rangers at Bearstone Ridge knew one rule: never whistle in the forest after midnight. It began with Ranger Hale on a solo patrol. He heard a soft whistle behind him, 3 notes, repeating. When he turned, the trail was empty. The whistle stopped. He radioed in. Static. Then a voice that mimicked his own answered, "Coming up behind you." Hale froze. Leaves shifted. A shadow moved, tall, thin, and wrong. Its pitch changed, copying his panic breathing perfectly. Hale ran. His body cam was later found among shredded fabric and claw marks on a tree, but Hale was never seen again. For weeks afterward, guards reported hearing their own voices calling their names in the dark. The cabin that shouldn't exist. Forest Guard Elisa patrolled an area where there were no structures, at least according to the park maps. But one foggy dawn, she found a cabin with a single oil lamp burning inside. She knocked. No sound. She opened the door. Inside were dozens of photographs pinned to the walls, all showing her walking her routes, sleeping in her ranger station cot, eating lunch, every angle from the forest. Chills crawling up her spine, she backed out, but the cabin door slammed shut behind her. The lamp extinguished instantly. When she radioed for backup, HQ responded, "Elisa, stay where you are. We're 2 minutes away from your station. You haven't left the building." She checked her GPS. They were right. She was exactly where she started her shift. The cabin was gone. The Thing with 2 Shadows. Guard Tomas patrolled the Widowmaker Trail as the sun set. The forest was heavy, unnaturally silent. He found a lost teenage boy huddled by a redwood, crying silently. "Are you hurt, son?" Tomas asked, shining his flashlight. The boy nodded frantically, but as the beam hit the ground, Tomas saw it. 2 shadows. One was normal, stretching across the trail. The second lagged behind, a twin silhouette that was sharper, blacker, and moved independently. Tomas watched in horror as the second shadow slowly lifted its head, its neck stretching thin, and an impossible, predatory grin split its face in the mud. Tomas gasped and stumbled back. In that instant, both the boy and the shadows vanished. A search team later found no trace of the boy. They only found massive, unnatural handprints pressed into the soft earth nearby. The prints had long, slender fingers and looked as if something enormous had crawled, dragging a human shape with it, before the trail ended abruptly at a sheer granite slab. The legend persists in the nearby towns. Late at night, people hear a desperate knock on their doors. A crying voice whispers, "Can you walk me home?" Those who open the door find no one, but when they turn back, they see a shadow moving in their hallway, tall, thin, and wrong. They become the new lagging shadow, forever following the voice that lured them out. The thing doesn't want to be walked home. It just wants company for the journey. The Roots That Breathe. Guards Miller and Reyes were searching for a missing hiker during a heavy storm in Blackwood Forest. They found her bag near a colossal, fallen oak, its massive roots ripped from the earth and exposed to the rain. As they approached, an unnatural silence fell. Miller swore he saw one of the thick roots pulse, expanding and contracting like a huge lung beneath the mud. Then came a faint, wet, choking sound from deep within the root system. Digging frantically, they expected to find the trapped hiker. Instead, they uncovered a human jawbone fused directly into a thick root. It wasn't skeletal. It was discolored and moving, opening and closing in a grotesque, silent chewing motion as the choking stopped. The guards fled. They found the missing hiker, Sarah Evans, miles away the next day. She was alive, but deeply broken. When they questioned her, she only whispered, her voice a dry rasp. "It's hungry, and it knows your names now. It wants to breathe you." Sarah was institutionalized. But every night, the guards swear, they still hear that faint, wet choking sound carried on the wind, a reminder of the ancient, hungry thing that waits beneath the roots. The Night of the Red Lanterns. Every year, for one night in October, the forest guards at Kingston Reserve enforced a rigid closure of all trails. The official reason was seasonal maintenance, but the truth was a chilling secret whispered only between veteran rangers. It was the Night of the Red Lanterns. The lanterns appeared deep in the forest, not hung, not placed, but simply there. No wind stirred them, no footsteps marked their arrival, and they burned with a crimson glow that cast moving shadows where there should be none. Ranger Daria, a skeptic who'd tired of the yearly lie, broke protocol. Ignoring the frantic static on her radio, she drove her ATV to an old fire break and walked in, flashlight off. The first lantern appeared 30 feet ahead, bobbing gently. Daria approached, her heart pounding a frantic rhythm against her ribs. She saw another, then 3 more, dotting the thick gloom of the pines. The deeper she went, the more lanterns she saw, swaying gently in the air like they were suspended on invisible threads. She stopped at a cluster of 5. She checked her flashlight, aimed the narrow beam, and swept it around the crimson lights. That's when the horrifying geometry clicked into place. There were no hooks, no poles, no hands. The lanterns were entirely free-floating. Then she realized they weren't floating, they were being carried. The space directly beneath each swaying light was a distortion, a shimmer in the air that was just shy of being a human shape, shapes that were silent, invisible, and moving with intent. A low, resonant hum began, not of insects or wires, but something vocal and sorrowful, surrounding her from all sides. The hum intensified, vibrating in her teeth. Daria finally understood the rule and the terror behind the closure. She spun and ran, abandoning her flashlight. She didn't look back until she slammed through the last line of brush onto the main road. Gasping, she risked a glance over her shoulder. The red lanterns had formed a perfect, silent line, clustered together like a set of curious, burning eyes. They weren't just following, they were advancing, and for a split second, Daria saw faint, panicked faces pressed against the inside of the lantern glass. When she stumbled back into the station, the terror had permanently scarred her. Her dark hair had turned completely white from root to tip. She refused to speak about what she saw, clutching her head and repeating only one fractured warning. Those weren't lanterns. They were souls trying to get out, and I let them see me. The trails stayed closed an extra week that year, and every night the staff could hear the low, sorrowful humming, a sound that seemed to be traveling closer to the town with every passing hour. The Screaming Tree. Forest Guard Milo was halfway through his late-night patrol when the screams started. They were blood-curdling, human, and chillingly close, the sound of pure, desperate agony. Believing a hiker was being brutally attacked, Milo abandoned his ATV and sprinted through the dense undergrowth, flashlight beams stabbing wildly into the darkness. The screams stopped abruptly. Milo arrived, panting, at a small clearing dominated by a massive, ancient, dead tree. It was blackened, scarred by old lightning strikes, and stood like a silent sentinel. He swept his light around the base, finding nothing. Just as he was about to radio in a false alarm, the screaming began again, not outside, but coming distinctly from inside the solid trunk. It was muffled, distorted, like 1,000 voices crying out underwater. Horrified, Milo approached and pressed his ear flat against the rough, cold bark. The screaming subsided, replaced by dozens of frantic, overlapping whispers emanating from the wood itself. "Let us out. You're next. He's coming for the bark. He knows you heard." Milo tore himself away from the tree, stumbling backward. He fled the clearing, the whispered threats seeming to follow him just behind the sound of his own heavy breathing. The next morning, too shaken to report his sighting, Milo drove directly back to the station. He told his supervisor he was taking immediate leave. Later that day, another ranger visited the clearing and reported something impossible. The massive dead tree had split wide open down the center. The splintered wood on the inside was warped and shredded, as if something with powerful claws or desperate hands had fought furiously to escape from within the trunk. Milo never returned to the service. He knew he hadn't just heard a ghost, he had heard a prison breaking open. And whatever had been inside was now free, and it knew his name. The compass that points to you. Ranger Ben swore by his grandfather's magnetic compass, a heavy brass artifact that had navigated the harshest wilderness for decades without fail. That loyalty evaporated one winter patrol deep inside the silent, snow-covered walls of the Ravenwood Canyon. He was checking his coordinates when the needle began to spin with violent, impossible speed, whining against the glass. It settled instantly, locking on to a precise point directly behind him. Ben looked back. Nothing but the pristine expanse of snow, broken only by his own tracks. He walked north for 50 yards, breaking his own trail. The needle remained locked, pointing not north, but directly at his starting position, behind him. He walked south. The needle followed, always aiming at his back, a silent, relentless stalker. No matter where he moved, the needle was locked onto him. Panic turned to terror. He tore at his radio dead static. Then, he looked down at the compass face. The reflection staring back at him was Ben, framed by the cold brass. But the needle wasn't pointing at his reflection. It was pointing into him, straight through the glass and through his chest, like a silent, invisible stake seeking his heart. It felt less like a navigation tool and more like an instrument of judgment. Ben didn't run. He fled. He tore through the canyon, throwing himself over rocks and brush until he burst out onto the sunlit, high trail. When he finally collapsed back at the station, the compass was cold and broken in his hand. The magnetic needle was warped into a perfect backward J shape, permanently aimed at the Ravenwood Canyon. He learned later that the area was locally known as the Mirror, a place where the forest doesn't reflect your path, but reflects what it has chosen to claim. The missing color. Guard Liam was known for his keen eye, but nothing prepared him for the sight he found during a post-storm assessment. A perfect circle of forest, about 50 feet across, where the color was simply wrong. It wasn't fading light. It was muted, drained, like a photograph bleached by time. The deep greens of the pine needles were sickly gray-yellow, and the rich brown soil was pale, lifeless, putty. As he stepped over the threshold, a wave of profound, immediate silence washed over him. It wasn't just quiet, it was the total absence of sound, the air feeling thin and cold, like breathing powdered chalk. He approached a large oak tree within the zone. At its base lay a deer carcass, but its death seemed wrong. The blood wasn't red. It was a disturbing shade of colorless violet. Liam tried to document the anomaly, but his professional camera refused to focus. The machine couldn't process the lack of vitality. A low, raspy whisper scraped through the profound silence, seeming to come from the very bark of the oak tree. "We need it back, Liam. You carry what we lost." Liam didn't wait. He stumbled backward out of the circle of faded color. As he crossed the invisible line, the vibrant, living colors of the normal forest slammed back into his eyes, overwhelming him with sudden, violent intensity. Shaking, he looked down at his own uniform. His sleeves, moments ago vibrant green, were now dull, gray, and utterly lifeless. The missing color had clung to him. Liam never returned to that section of the reserve, taking an immediate transfer. He claimed he saw the world in low resolution for weeks afterward, the missing vibrancy slowly leaching out of him, a constant, chilling reminder that something in the forest had reached out and taken a piece of his life force. The echo that answers too quickly. Ranger Ava knew the canyon rule drilled into every guard. When you shout, wait 5 full seconds for your echo. Anything earlier, and you're listening to something else entirely. Crossing the deep, narrow, Black Gulch ravine one afternoon, Ava shouted her name as a standard check. Before the sound could possibly travel, a perfect, loud echo of "Ava" came back instantly. 0 delay. It sounded like the voice was right behind her, trapped in the narrow cut of the canyon. She tried again, whispering, "Hello?" The immediate reply was a distorted, choked off, "Hello," that sent a jolt of ice down her spine. Ava spun, flashlight sweeping the sheer, wet canyon wall. Nothing. Panic closing her throat, she fumbled for her radio, whispering quickly, "I need extraction. I'm at the lower ravine." Before she could finish the thought, a voice, clearly not her own, but a perfect, mocking echo of the first half of her incomplete sentence, came back through her own radio speaker. "I need extraction. I'm at the lower ravine." The creature in the canyon wasn't echoing sound waves. It was echoing her intent. It knew what she was going to say before she said it, preempting her survival. Ava screamed, a sound that was instantly mirrored by a high, triumphant shriek from the depths of the rock. She dropped her radio and ran, listening to the instantaneous, mocking echoes of her frantic, ragged breathing follow her all the way back to the station. She spent the next week terrified of silence, knowing that somewhere in the dark, something was waiting for her next unspoken word. The forest, it doesn't forget. It watches, it whispers, and for those who patrol its darkest corners, the shadows may already be watching you. So the next time you hear a whistle, a rustle, or see a shadow moving where it shouldn't, remember, some forests aren't just alive, they are hungry.